What's up everybody and welcome back to the channel. In this video for the First Descendant today, we are talking about Albion Cavalry Gun, which is an ultimate machine gun in the game. Now personally for me, this weapon has been instrumental in my journey from Void Erosion 21 through to 30. And what I mean by this is, let me explain. So pretty much when we look at Void Erosion Purge and we're talking about stages 21 to 30, and again, this is framed from a perspective of playing it solo. The challenge that I put for myself when I started doing 21 to 30 is that I wanted to do all of these solo, and I wanted to figure out a way that I could do so without, going into groups, anything like that, especially when you hit a wall. Now, when you start out with these, you'll find that, and I think this was the case for a lot of players, that you show up in 21, and a lot of people have built out Innes and so on, and she absolutely slams these first couple of, levels. And everything is going well until you sort of kind of hit like a wall at 25 and 26. And this is by design, obviously. These levels and this whole thing is essentially one big gear / skill check. And as you are playing these, you're going to learn things like ammo management, again, framed from a solo perspective. A lot of these things which I'm saying right now become kind of like non-points if you're playing in a group, because groups can have like an Enzo in. That means that you don't really have to worry about ammo and things like that. Even though they've recently patched that, ammo can still sometimes be an issue when you're solo, so it's always something that needs to be in the back of your mind. And so group is different than solo, so think about this from a solo perspective. So the point is, you get to about 25, 26, and that's your first real test, okay? And most likely at this point in time, you need to abandon Innes. Not all the time. Some people play Innes better than others. And also, by the way, there's more than one way to do everything, so I can merely speak about my journey. And then basically, as you make it through this, then you kind of have, I would say, a easier mission. Then for some reason 27 felt a lot easier than 26 for me, especially when I was going through it. And then you kind of hit your next wall over here. Now, there are certain weapons in the game that are going to trivialize these skill checks, and Albion Cavalry Gun is one of them. Albion Cavalry Gun will significantly improve your chance for success in 25 and 26, and that's of course because it features Legion of Darkness, which is, are enemies that are weak to, chill, and Albion Cavalry Gun is chill supreme. But it's also because here's where the damage really starts ramping up against you, and Albion Cavalry Gun is fantastic at mitigating that, because you are locking down entire rooms of enemies, and so therefore once they are stunned because of the unique effect of Albion Cavalry Gun, they can't fucking do anything to you, and you kind of just drill them down. So what you'll notice is, if you are struggling with these, and I've made a dedicated video for this, but if you're struggling here, simply switching to a gun descendant like Hailey, Enzo, Blair or Valby, and equipping Albion Cavalry Gun with this build will kind of make this super easy and get you into 27 very fast. So just to start us off, let's go ahead and just discuss the unique effect. So the unique effect of Albion Cavalry Gun seems like there's a lot going on here, because my god, it's a page and a half full of shit. But pretty much what it comes down to is the fact that when you shoot enemies, you mark them. Now when you hit an enemy with a mark, it increases your critical hit rate, and it basically then it increases it by this amount here, plus 30, and then it applies a buff to the attack. Now each critical hit that you then hit enemies with will then shoot out this stun effect that stuns targets around the target that you're hitting. So even those targets that are then stunned also take damage, firearm damage times 32%. The stun duration is super generous. It's like 4 seconds. And then as an added little bonus on top of this, since this is an LMG, it is going to slow you down. You have this horseshoe effect that essentially, as long as you are shooting, it speeds you up. So you kind of feel like you don't lose too much movement due to the fact that you're shooting an LMG. So the bottom line here is pretty much when you go into a room, you find the toughest enemy and you either drill him, and then the stuns that shoot out from him basically kill all the trash around him. Or if that enemy is dangerous to you and is going to deal a lot of damage to you, then what you can do is you can hit the trash around him, which will stun him and which will allow you then to turn on him with some damage. That's pretty much it. That's kind of like the way that you can play this. It seems a lot more complicated than it is, because I use a lot of words, but it's really easy to manage. Let's look at the build. So starting us off, the same place we always start is our firearm attack that we get from action and reaction, and our firearm attack that we get from rifling reinforcement. Now you also do want to boost up your fire rate with this, because it is an LMG, and while it's not the slowest LMG, it does need a little bit of love when it comes to actually just pushing out bullets a little bit faster. Now, also, we have to bear in mind that Albion Cavalry Gun, the reason why it's good in 25 and 26 is those enemies are weak to chill, and Albion Cavalry Gun's innate element is chill, and we can absolutely boost that up by also putting in chill enhancement. I definitely would advise this, and once we put that in, it's going to give you another 30% of your firearm attack as chill attack, and this basically goes on top of what we already have in as the innate ability. Now, at this point in time, we need to talk about crit, because we know that because of the unique ability, a lot of our let's call it utility, the stuns and all of that, and of course our damage as well, because crit damage is of course far superior to just normal damage, requires us to crit. All right, but we also have to bear in mind that we do get this increase here once we actually engage with enemies that have a mark on them. And we also have to bear in mind that we are using a gun descendant, like in my case here, Hailey, who also boosts up the firearm critical hit rate of the weapon that you're using. Now, that being said, we're not going to push for a 100% critical hit rate. I find that for me, and again, your mileage may vary, feel free to test it yourself, but all of the footage that you've been seeing so far is exactly this build that I'm showing you right now. For me, I stack it to about just above 50%. Now, of course, higher than that could absolutely be better, but that requires displacing some of the other mods that we are putting in, and therefore it's kind of like, not something that I want. However, there are also many different ways to build this weapon, and you can focus more into crit, you can focus more into element and everything, whereas I feel like I tried to set up a hybrid build that had decent element damage, decent crit, decent mag size, so kind of like straight across the middle, not the best at everything, but good at most. All right. So speaking about magazine size, from an LMG perspective, we have 83 in this weapon. Of course, this is affected by things like substats and weapon cores and so on, but we have 83 in the mag right now. So it's an LMG. We're going to be using it to drill down yellow bars and stuff like that. So we absolutely want more bullets. So one of the easiest ways to do that is to use something called expand weapon charge that gives us another 49% rounds per magazine. And then what I do is I go ahead and I throw in another mag. So I put in concentrate support ammo. Concentrate support ammo is good for us. It's not quite as many bullets as we get from expand weapon charge, only 30%, but it also gives us 6.5% firearm critical hit damage, and we are going to be critting with this weapon, and so we want to capitalize on those crits by actually dealing decent damage, and a little bit of extra firearm critical hit damage goes a long way. At this point in time, we also, while we're talking about critical hit damage, let's go ahead and slap in better concentration as well. A better concentration gives us a massive jump in our critical hit damage of 74.8%. And this is a good place for us to be, but we can be better. So we can also put in something called concentration priority. Concentration priority is another big jump in critical hit damage for us at 120%, but now we do have a slight penalty in terms of our reload. Now, this is an LMG, which means that high duration, or let me say long duration reloads is kind of like the name of the game. So you do need to factor in, and you'll see it in the footage of anybody that runs this, they are most likely doing some form of reload canceling where, they load halfway and then roll, or you can even just press the fire button and it'll actually give you your full mag and you can go. So this is a common thing. It's a muscle memory thing. You kind of like have to teach yourself that, but once you do, it's going to make the weapon feel a lot more functional, because the long reloads are not going to be that much of a fucking headache. Now, at this point in time, we should target a gold mod. Now, I think sharp precision shot is really good for us here, because you're not going to have a problem with killing trash with this. So red bar enemies are not going to be a problem. What you are going to get stuck into is yellow bar enemies, and those ones you oftentimes need to just you kill pretty much everything around them. Everything around them automatically dies to the unique weapon effect, and then you just got to plow all your damage into this one enemy, or possibly two that are standing there, and both of them are tough with yellow bars. Sharp precision shot does drop your fire rate at the beginning, but then you get your fire rate back over time as long as you hold the trigger in, and you're also increasing your firearm attack, and you're also reducing your recoil. So it becomes much easier for you to keep focused on that one target. This gun does have a lot of like upward sort of like whipple, like when you pull the trigger, especially if you aim down sights. So this absolutely does help for that. This of course stacks up to 10, and then once you reach 10 stacks, you are at your most lethal. You're dealing a lot more damage, your fire rate is pretty high, and you pretty much just empty your mag onto the enemy and kill him. The last slot here is one that I've tested a lot of stuff on. Now, the footage that you saw in or at the beginning of the video and so far through it, I've been running inside focus. And the reason why I run inside focus is this is what gets me to just above 50% critical hit rate. Now, it stands to reason that you could, for instance, like if critical hit rate was your objective here, you could put more critical hit rate in here, right? So you could put in something like, what is it called? Edging shot, for example, right? So we could go edging shot in here, and that's going to give us a massive jump of critical hit rate, but also with a 15% firearm attack deficit. You could also, because you are, let's say, more concerned with focusing into elements or something like that, you could also use something like chill priority, right? Because this weapon has a decent, so we could put chill priority in there. This weapon has a decent amount of firearm attack, but also a very, very decent amount of chill attack. So the bottom line is both of these are good ones for us to stack, and it all depends on what your focus is. I think I have, well, most of my experience has been with this exact version that I've built here. I am still going to do a bunch of runs with the chill priority one, everything like that. I don't necessarily have a problem with the setup, but I do believe you can juice out some more damage with this. With this setup, it's even possible to exist in Void Erosion tier 30. It's not the fastest way to clear that content, but it is hella comfortable and it still bangs. So you can absolutely lock down rooms, you can kill the enemies, because once again, 30 is also weak to chill. So let this be your choice. The footage, like I said, that you saw me running is I am running inside focus. I mean, my god, if the reload bothers you, you could also put a reload mod in there, whatever. See this as like a flex slot, do with it as you please. This is the setup right here. And what this then, oops, that's definitely the wrong button. What this then does for us is it gives us 50k firearm attack, 55k chill, and of course this is influenced by things like substats and our weapon cores, but I'm just giving you a stat page here quickly. And we have like a 8% critical hit rate, but I mean this is going to go way up. I'll show you just now in the lab. And then we have a 5.4 times a critical hit rate multiplier, so that when we actually crit, that's the damage that we see coming through. But before we move to the lab, let's quickly talk substats and weapon cores. Substats up first. You can see here that I've purposefully omitted adding crit hit here. I've purposely omitted adding it in the mods because I want Hailey's ability to essentially do most of the work there for me, and I also want the actual unique ability which gives you that critical hit rate increase to actually do that work for me. So you could obviously opt for building this a different way, but for me, I went for chill attack here. I went for rounds per magazine. I went for firearm critical hit damage because once again, we are going to be critting. You want those crits to slam. And then of course, obviously you need to include firearm attack. Now, when it comes to the weapon cores themselves, let's quickly just have a look at that. And I want to say, I think the weapon core distribution for this weapon is also very favorable. I don't think there are any wasted slots, so to speak. So we have 2 free augmentations, which is super juicy. We have an attribute augmentation, we have a hit augmentation, and we have a tactical augmentation. Okay. So for the 2 free augmentations, I went for firearm attack. Now, if you want to go just completely into an elemental version of this, then what obviously makes sense for you here is to go 2 chills and then another chill here, like running 3 chills. I've yet to test this. Obviously, we need to re-gear this shit the whole time. I'm actually thinking of just gearing up a second Albion Cavalry Gun. Maybe that's just fucking easier. But the bottom line is this is what I ended up going for, rather the 2 firearm attacks. My reasoning here was that I like the ripple out stuns. I like those to deal a decent bit of damage. And with this setup here, those mean that when you shoot the main enemy, and remember you're shooting the main enemy and you're dealing chill damage to them, so oftentimes you also sort of like freeze them, which again keeps them from, you know, attacking you. But the ripple out stuns that you send from that target most of the time kill the trash without you having to actually put a single bullet into them, which is one of the reasons why I like this setup. And that damage is actually derived from your firearm attack. So the higher firearm attack, the higher those stuns hit. It's not massive damage, but it makes a difference. The chill attack is a no-brainer for us here. I have a fucking poopies roll here. I have re-rolled this thing like fucking 16 times, and I cannot get higher than 152%. Like literally twice it's rolled 150 and 151, so I just think I'm fucking cursed. But it is what it is. You can get a higher roll here, which is going to be obviously a lot better. This shit can go all the way up to 184, so it can get a lot spicier. Then from a hit augmentation, this is where it gets interesting again as well. Critical hit damage and critical hit rate are the two that's worth discussing here. We don't need to really talk about weak point damage. I roll critical hit damage on here because once again, I want those crits to slam when they happen. Now, it stands to reason here that if you wanted to try to figure out a way that you could build this weapon into crit, then the point is you would run crit hit rate here instead of crit hit damage. But again, like my current setup here, I'm focused more on the critical hit damage because we're critting kind of like more than enough. Our fire rate is a good option here. Rounds per magazine is always a good idea as well. But the reason why I don't run rounds here is because I have those two mods there. You could perhaps take one of those mods out and then run rounds here and then lose some of this fire rate. But I do like the fact that, I mean, it's an LMG, so it has like a super slow fire rate. So it's at 563. This will, of course, ramp up once SPS engages, right? But the point is, without that fire rate increase, this is abysmally low for me. And it kind of like feels like you're auto shooting with a shotgun more than anything else, because it's just so fucking slow if you compare it to something like, I don't know, Thunder Cage or Enduring Legacy or whatever, anything like that. So yeah, that's basically it. 143 bullets in the mag, just super juicy. And that's it. That's pretty much the setup here. Now, two things I quickly want to cover before I let you go. Actually, we still need to go to the lab as well. So that's fucking three things. So firstly, it goes without saying, guys, I kind of like always forget to say this in the videos, but sort of my assumption is people know this, but you need to be, you know, using these, right? So when you are wanting to juice the maximum amount of elemental damage out of whichever gun you're using, and you're going into a void erosion purge that needs a specific element, obviously match that element, right? So if you're going into chill rounds where you need chill damage, then, you know, go ahead and put on chill focus rounds. All right, so these are super powerful. They elevate your damage by quite a bit, so it's kind of like a no-brainer. You got to put that shit in. Just get it done. Then also, the exact build that I'm using for Hailey in the footage that you've been seeing, and what I basically use to grind with this gun in Void Erosion Purge, is this one here. It's my standard gun build with one difference. We don't have Biosync Shield in here. We have Shield Collector. You are killing a lot of enemies and you're killing a lot of trash super fast, and that's going to keep your shield stocked up the entire time. And this is what allows you to play kind of like very aggressive, because you're benefiting from two things here. One, you're locking down the rooms, and any enemy fire that actually does make it through that bullshit is negated by the fact that as soon as you kill some trash, you basically just stock your shield back up again, because you're playing like a very thick Hailey, right? So this is Hailey with 23.5k shield. So absolutely, you know, this works really well. And in 25 and 26, the shit is an absolute breeze. So then just in the lab here, we can quickly just engage Hailey's skills so we can see how our crit rate goes up. We're basically going to plateau just past 50%. Now, bear in mind that this amount does not include the additional that you get from the unique ability. So it's this, and then the unique ability on top is your actual critical hit rate. And that is what allows you to actually then send all those stuns out. And as you've been seeing from the footage, it's stunning pretty much everything all the time, and it works really well. Your only real problem is when you are fighting the boss, because the boss is by himself. And so therefore you're not really going to benefit too much from like the stuns, because they're not going to be happening. But also a lot of the times you have enough raw damage and you can just kind of like dance around the arena and you'll be able to just deal damage just fine. Kind of like just play the arena against the boss. And of course, most of the bosses actually in their second phase, they will summon some adds, and you can then shoot those adds again to stun everything and so on. So still works pretty damn well. But that's it for the video. Thank you so much for watching. As always, the support for the First Descendant content has been fantastic. Let me know in the comments down below which weapon is your go-to for chill stages. Like I said, it doesn't have to be Albion Cavalry Gun, but the shit just works. As always, fucking cheers.